Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalam ala Rasoolullah. Amma ba'd. Okay, anyone here who was not here last week? Everybody was here except for you. Okay, so we were last week talking about the turn of events in the Battle of Ahzab, also known as Battle of Khandaq. Battle of Ahzab does not have a lot of actual battles. That's what's beautiful about Ahzab. The greatest confederation, the greatest arming together of Quraysh, Abu Sufyaan, Ghatafan, the paid agents, Banu Qurayza, the traders within Medina, and Banu Nadir, which was expelled in Khaybar, and that leader, Huyay ibn Akhtab. Biggest army, 10,000 forces, and they could not kill more than a handful of Sahaba. And so it is mainly all about strategies. Battle of Ahzab is all about what happens, the distrust and everything, back and forth. And so last week we had to really quickly end on Nuaym ibn Masood al-Ghatafani. So what happened was the trench is dug, forces have arrived. Ali radiallahu anh has done the battle with the greatest fighter of them all. That guy is dead. Ghatafan is like, if your guys, that is the Muslims, can kill the greatest fighter, then I'm not going in there. You guys better start. On the other hand, Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl, which is the leader from Abu Sufyaan's side, the son of Abu Jahl, and you have Khalid ibn al-Waleed, the other leader. They're trying to come through other means other than the trench to be able to get into it, but the Sahaba are keeping them at bay. So you have Abu Sufyaan, the leader, Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl, Khalid ibn al-Waleed on the side of Quraysh. You have Ghatafan, who's looking at all of this happening and nobody's moving, so it's kind of like a stalemate. The food is dwindling, the food supplies are finishing. The Sahaba are to the point where they're cold, they are hungry, they've not slept. They are now in fear of their women and children because they just found out that Banu Qurayza has flipped. And Banu Qurayza, in front of Sa'ad ibn Mu'ad, the greatest leader of Ansar of Medina, the greatest Sahabi in Medina, in front of him they tore up the treaty and threw it in his face. He said, what treaty? What constitution? So open treachery. And so we are sitting at a time when the Sahaba have no idea what's going to happen. In this time, the munafiq, the worst kinds of people who are pretending to be Muslims amongst the Sahaba, decided to leave. And they said, here's the man who said he's going to get Rome and Syria and everything for us. We cannot even go out to take a dump. That's what he said, A'udhu Billah. This man, Abdullah ibn Ubay and Salul. And so he, along with his munafiq mates, left the Khandaq, went back to the city. The Sahaba are thinned out. Now, when these battles are being fought, all of this is being maintained. Ali radiallahu anh has fought. Zubayr radiallahu anh has slashed the person in half, his body cut in half. This is happening. These are the tidbits that we know. At this time, when everything looks like they might start attacking from the Muslim perspective, and from their perspective, the best of their men are dying, Allah changes the whole course of events by making somebody a Muslim, the most unlikely of all people. The biggest sellouts, the Ghatafanis, who were paid agents, mercenaries. Nuaym ibn Masood al-Ghatafani comes over, walks past the trench. The Sahaba are all ready, like this man is coming, Ghatafani is coming, they're all ready. And Nuaym comes in and says, Ashhadu annaka Muhammad Rasoolullah, I believe in you as a Rasoolullah. Who is Nuaym? Nuaym was from Ghatafan, so he's neutral. He's not Qurayshi and he's not Banu Qurayza's friend. But he had business meetings, business dealings with Medina. So he used to come to Medina to deal with the Jews because they had all the money, the supermarkets, all the gold supply, dates, whatever. And he used to go to Makkah for trade as well. Abu Sufyaan had used his services and he said to Nuaym, listen, I have to go to a battle with Medina, but we don't have the money or the wherewithal, we don't have the weapons enough, and last year we suffered a lot in Uhud, so I want you to do something for me. Go to Medina as a neutral guy, Ghatafani, and say, don't fight Makkah. They have the biggest army you've ever seen. You do not want to go to fight against Makkah. Because Abu Sufyaan last year said we're going to meet again at Badr to fight again. And so Nuaym takes the money from Makkah and goes to Medina for business purposes, does his business with Banu Qurayza, the Jews. Then he goes to the Medina Masjid of the Rasoolullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he comes to the mosque and he must have seen the Jum'ah khutbah. He must have seen the life of Medina. He must have seen the Rasoolullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it's a theory that this thing that he's seeing, this conversation that he's seeing, was enough for him to start thinking that Islam is the right way. But at this time he's not a Muslim. He's just looking at the lifestyle in Medina. Imagine our khutbah in here. Imagine the Rasoolullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is reciting the Quran. And you know, we love all these qaris on YouTube. Imagine you get to listen to the qira'ah of the Rasoolullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the impact he must have had. So again, even if he was a Ghatafani, hired agent, he's coming literally to do a work that he is being paid money for. But what he sees is what he sees, and so something impacted him. In any case, he has come for a job. His job is to convince the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba, don't go to Badr for part 2 of Uhud fight. So he says, I need to tell you something as a neutral person. Abu Sufyaan has the greatest force you can imagine. You do not want to fight him. You do not want to fight Makkah. And so I suggest you don't fight. And so the Prophet ﷺ said, we will fight, even if I'm the last person standing at Badr, we will fight. Seeing this, Abu Sufyaan is obviously unsuccessful in convincing the Muslims that they are going to be scared of fighting against the Makkans. And so he has done his job. He was asked to tell the Rasulullah ﷺ, do not fight, but he did that. He did the business of Banu Qurayza and he came back to Ghatafan. So Abu Sufyaan trusts him completely. He is the person in Ghatafan who can be trusted. And Banu Qurayza trusts him completely in Medina because he's the person who does business with us. And Ghatafan is literally being paid money to fight and attack, and they're being paid half the money of the revenue produced by the other city, Khaybar. Half the money that Khaybar makes in 1 year, that's the money being given to Ghatafan to participate in this Ahzab fight. So the one person who is the most trusted by Quraysh, by Banu Qurayza, and by Khaybar, because they're paying him literally, is the person who decides to accept Islam. And he comes and he says, I believe in you as the Rasulullah. And so the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba, they're already stretched out, they're thinned out at the Khandaq. One more man can't do much on the Khandaq side, on the Muslim side. So he says, Labbaika ya Rasulullah, I'm here for you ya Rasulullah. So the Prophet says, you are just one man. There's not much you can do here, but you can do something on the other side. And so do what you can on the other side. So he understands his job is to go on the other side in Abu Sufyaan's camp and sow seeds of mistrust. And so he says, Ya Rasulullah, do you give me permission to talk negatively about you? Because I'm a Ghatafani, I have to talk in bad language about you. Obviously, I'm with the enemies. And so the Prophet says, yes, war is deceit. War is khid'ah, not khiyana. And I explained this last week. Khiyana is treachery. Khiyana is treachery, is haram in Islam, in war, in any position. Khiyana is, I take an oath, I will protect this person. Or I take an oath let's say we are Canadians. We have taken, I don't know how many of us are Canadians here, but I've taken an oath that I will not betray my land of Canada. Now tomorrow, Canada decides, let's say for example, kill someone who is a Muslim. And we know this person is a Muslim. We should not be participating in the killing of the Muslim. We should be participating in helping our country understand we cannot kill. What we cannot do is the other enemy force who wants to now attack Canada for killing this, we cannot partner with that Muslim force to hurt Canada. Even though they're Muslims and we agree with their theology or with their understanding, but we cannot do khiyana because we have a paper sign with Canada. If you want to join that force, submit your passport, submit your visa, say I'm not going to be a Canadian anymore, go. No problem. Just don't do khiyana. Don't backstab. So khiyana is never allowed in Islam. Khid'a is deceit by deception. And I gave the example where Abu Bakr as-Siddiq was doing hijrah and he went to Medina. And the person, when he stopped at a house, this lady said, who is this man with you, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And he said, oh, this is my guide. He did not say this is the Rasulullah or the Prophet, because then they will say, oh, we have a bounty on his head, $1 million, 100 camels. I found him. So he just said, this is my guide. And obviously when you travel, you have a guide. But the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a guide for all of us. So he's not lying, but he is deceiving into believing that he's a guide. So yes, we can do khid'ah. And so in that too in a war, you can do khid'ah with your wife in your regular life. Okay. So in a state of a war, he gets permission. Yes, go ahead and say what you have to say to strategically win over them. Okay. So Nuaym ibn Masood, remember this name, radiyallahu anhu. He goes to Banu Qurayza, which is in Medina on the backside. And he comes to Banu Qurayza and says, hey guys, you know me. We are good friends. We are business partners. We are so good with each other. I need to tell you something as a friend. You see, Abu Sufyaan has his forces. We have just been paid money by Khaybar, so we're going to leave if we don't get the money. Abu Sufyaan is going to leave if his money and his food supplies are dwindling. Guess who's going to be left here? Because Khaybar is already kicked out, right? The Banu Nadir. You're the only guys who are going to be left here. Are you crazy for participating in this battle? Because you're the only ones who will be left. We're all going to leave. So my suggestion as a friend is, if you want to continue in this battle, go to Abu Sufyaan and tell him, give me 70 of your Quraysh men, the Ashraf, the actual elite Quraysh. Don't ask for slaves, because they don't care if the slaves die. But ask for the Ashraf. Say, bring them over to Banu Qurayza, and we're going to fight together. If they refuse, don't fight. Because they're never going to leave without their people. They're going to ransom off their people. But If they say no, then you don't need to fight. Otherwise, you're the ones who are going to be paying the price for this. So Banu Qurayza says, you're such a good friend. Thank you for the suggestion. Okay. Then Nuaym ibn Masood crosses the trench, goes over to Abu Sufyaan and says, yeah, Abu Sufyaan. And Abu Sufyaan looks at Nuaym. Oh my God, Nuaym, my friend, of course, please come in. You know, they give him special tea and everything. And he says, our friendship forces me to tell you something that is top secret. Okay. And so he does a private conversation with Abu Sufyaan, complete trust. And he says, I was at Banu Qurayza, and you're not going to believe what they said. They said that they're going to switch sides. They're regretting the decision of switching to you guys. They hate this Huyay ibn Akhtab, the guy from Khaybar, Banu Nadir, and they have decided they're going to go back with the Rasoolullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they're scared that now because they've committed this khiyana, how do they pay this off? So their kafara is basically, what if we give you 70 of Quraysh and you can kill them, and then we are off the hook? And so they've agreed with this with the Rasulullah, with the Prophet. And so if anyone from Banu Qurayza comes to you and says, give me 70 of your men, be alert. Because that is for sure khiyana. Abu Sufyaan says, what a friend you are. Thank you so much for telling me this. Of course. Great, let me think about this. Okay, great. So he tells this to Ikrimah and Khalid bin Waleed when he leaves. Okay, great. Then he goes to his own Ghatafan and he says, guys, listen. I have a feeling that 70 of our men are going to be requested by Banu Qurayza. We're not going to give them. Because we're being paid money for this. We have no more to do with other than this. So we're not going to give them anything. They will ask for 70 of our men. We're not going to. Shortly after this conversation, Banu Qurayza sends a man, Samuel, coming to Abu Sufyaan and says, listen, you guys have waited a long time. The trench is dug. You guys are not coming over. Ghatafan is, just sitting there. You guys are sitting there. That's enough. We need to attack, all of us, because we have switched sides. We don't know what's going to happen to us if you guys leave. And if your food supplies leave, you're going to leave. And so we need to start attacking immediately, Banu Qurayza is saying. But we need 70 of your men, because we don't want you to leave. Because if you leave, we're dead. We are stuck. And from their perspective, it's a very reasonable request. You understand, right? It's very reasonable for them to ask this. And they're completely on the side of Abu Sufyaan right now. But Abu Sufyaan is thinking, I knew this was coming. You guys have this completely planned out. And he says, okay, just give me some time, let me think about it. And so Banu Qurayza, this agent, this man goes back. Nuaym ibn Masood was there. And he most likely heard this. We don't have this in the books, but he most likely heard this. That Abu Sufyaan was extremely angry and everything. Anyway, so Nuaym ibn Masood now goes to Banu Qurayza and says, do you know what Abu Sufyaan was saying after he left? He said, do they think we are fools giving them 70 of our ashraf? Wallahi, I'm not going to give them a baby camel. Forget about my ashraf. I'm not going to give them a baby camel. I'm never giving them anything. And so Banu Qurayza now knows they're not going to give me people. They might leave any time. This Huyay ibn Akhtab is the one who put us in this mess. We switched sides. We tore up the treaty in front of Sa'ad and Mu'ad. And so he's holding his head going, Astaghfirullah. This leader's name is Ka'ab ibn al-Asad. He goes, I knew this man is trouble. The Huyay ibn Akhtab from Banu Nadir, the other Jew. It was his idea to do this Ahzab. Now we are in trouble. What do we do? What should we do now? And so Abu Sufyaan over there on that camp, he's getting uneasy. Ghatafan is like, you guys have a problem. And Nuaym is saying, don't participate in this. Let them do their own thing. And Banu Qurayza is saying, send us 70 of your men or else we're not going to go. So this distrust has been sowed by the great Sahabi Nuaym radiallahu anh. Abu Sufyaan is getting pretty upset. Abu Sufyaan says that let's do an emergency meeting. Everybody. Ghatafan, Banu Qurayza, Huyay ibn Akhtab, Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl, and Khalid ibn Waleed, my forces. Everybody we're going to attack tomorrow. That's it. No more conversations. Send me this, send me that. Everybody attacks. So there's nothing to send anybody. And this was a sudden decision made. Spontaneous decision. So no time to think. Anyone who now wants to get some time, that's the traitor, right? If Ghatafan says no, give us some time, that's the traitor. So he says, sudden announcement, everybody attacks tomorrow. Done. But you see, when he announced this, it was Friday, Asr time. What happens after Asr? Maghrib. Next day, which is Saturday. Saturday is Sabbath for Jews, it's like ihram for us. No plucking, no this, no that, no nothing you can do. And so for Sabbath, for the Jews, you cannot fight, you cannot do business, you cannot do anything except for Allahu Akbar and praying and ibadah and dhikr all day. This, for the Jews, is the biggest sin after shirk, to do anything on Saturday. breaking the Sabbath. And in their law, in the Torah, in the time, if we were born at that time, maybe we would have had to follow that. But we are the Ummah of the Rasulullah. So it's easy for us. Our Rasulullah is Rahmatul Alameen. And so for us, yes, go for Jum'ah and then done. Enjoy with your life, with your wife, your business, your kids. But this is now. And so in that time, the Jews had to practice the Sabbath. And so Sabbath, breaking the Sabbath is for us. If astaghfirullah, somebody says, you're fasting, how about you have some drink and get a free iPhone or something? Astaghfirullah, nobody can think breaking this fast, right? But for the Jews, Sabbath is kind of like that. I can't break the Sabbath. And so Banu Qurayza sends a message to Abu Sufyaan saying, you want all of us to attack tomorrow? Let's attack day after tomorrow, Sunday. Give us one day, because Saturday is Sabbath. And so the message goes to Abu Sufyaan and he goes in a rage. He says, what? Why? What is this Sabbath? Now realize he's a mushrik. And al-Ghatafani are mushriks. They don't know what is Sabbath. They're not people of the book. We, the Muslims, and Banu Nadir, which is Jews, and Banu Qurayza, they are the ones who understand what is people of the book, right? What is Sabbath? For them, it's like, what is this excuse of Sabbath? And so they call, Abu Sufyan calls for Banu Nadir's head, Huyay ibn Yakhtab, the wretched Huyay ibn Yakhtab. He says, come here. What is this new excuse that you people have? We just decided we're all attacking tomorrow, and now you come up with this Sabbath business. What is this Sabbath? And even Huyay ibn Yakhtab, despite being the horrible man, he says, that is the one day we cannot fight. Let's fight on Sunday. He says, why? What is Saturday except for a day between Friday and Sunday? That's all that Saturday is. He can't understand the purpose of Sabbath. And so Huyay ibn Yakhtab is so scared that he might go in a rage. He says, I swear by Lat and Uzza, which is the gods that he used to believe in, this is a trick that you and Banu Qurayza have set up to partner with Muhammad ﷺ against me. So now he's putting Huyay ibn Yakhtab in the camp of Banu Qurayza, partnering with the Rasulullah. And Huyay ibn Yakhtab is like the Abu Jahl of Jews. He hates the Rasulullah. But Abu Sufyan thinks, you guys are all tricking me with this Sabbath business. So Huyay ibn Yakhtab is so scared that he's going to probably kill him. And so he says, just let me talk to Banu Qurayza. Let me go back and talk to them. I'll convince them to break the Sabbath. Astaghfirullah. Now in their law, that is even if they don't believe in Muhammad or Rasulullah, at least they believed in La ilaha illallah. He's willing to even break this. He has no moral compass. He goes back to Banu Qurayza and says, guys, you got to break the Sabbath. Let's just attack tomorrow. Abu Sufyan is really livid. And so Banu Qurayza now, already tired of this Huyay ibn Yakhtab, he's the one who led them into this mess. They say, you want us to break the Sabbath? Never. We will die, but we will never break the Sabbath. How dare you say this? How dare you ask us to break the Sabbath, the oath of Allah? Now Huyay ibn Yakhtab is so scared, I can't go back to Abu Sufyan. He's going to kill me. So he decides to stay with the Banu Qurayza. And that's where he's going to meet his death eventually. He decided to stay with Banu Qurayza, and everybody else is going to leave, and he's the one who's going to be found with Banu Qurayza. Anyway. So Abu Sufyan now has already announced that you have to break the Sabbath. Nobody is now coming from Banu Qurayza's side. He said, let me go and talk to them, but he doesn't come back. So he's not coming back. Abu Sufyan is waiting, when are we going to attack? Tomorrow we got to attack. It is at this time, the sandstorms, the dust storms, the wind became so strong that even the heating, the bonfire that they had started extinguishing. And you know the cold of Medina, no food, no water, on the side of the Sahaba. On their side, they had food, some water, they have animals, but dust storm is getting really heavy. It is really, really thick, to the point where they can barely see their own hands. That's really, really strong. So situation is not good. It's not tenable. They can't stay there as long as they want. And so it was actually a good strategy on his part, Abu Sufyan, that let's just attack tomorrow. But now they're not going to break the Sabbath. So now what do you do? It's a stalemate. And Ghatafan is not moving. So Ghatafan is like about to leave. He's like, we are done with this if things don't progress. So let's come to the side of Sahaba now. They have no idea that they are being treacherous. Now realize, Nuaym ibn Masood does not come back to the Sahaba. And so he is just with them the whole time. The Sahaba have no idea what's going on. In their mind, now we have a dust storm, no more food, no supplies, and these guys are getting ready to fight, and Banu Qurayza has cheated. Munafiq have left. It's the worst time for the Sahaba. It is in this time that we need to now talk about one more Sahabi, Hudayfa ibn Yaman. How many of you know Hudayfa ibn Yaman? Okay. So we have to talk about this Sahabi because this is probably the last story of Ahzab before Ahzab is going to be over, inshallah. Hudayfa ibn Yaman is describing this incident himself. So Hudayfa ibn Yaman is known as the Sahib al-Sir, the secret keeper of the Rasulullah. You see, every disciple, every companion of the Rasulullah is known for something, right? Ali radiallahu anh, he is who he is. Umar radiallahu anh, Hudayfa ibn Yaman had this honor that nobody else had. Remember we talked about Hassan al-Thabit? He was a poet, the official poet of the Rasoolullah. Hudayfa ibn Yaman was the Sahib al-Sir, the secret keeper. The Prophet had given a list of all the munafiq. And Umar radiallahu anhu, when he was the Khalifa, he used to check. If Hudayfa is going to attend the janazah of this man, then Umar radiallahu anhu will attend the janazah. And if he's not, then he would not. But Hudayfa ibn Yaman had been told he's not going to tell who's on this list to anybody. And this is off the topic, but I'll tell you this. One time, Umar radiallahu anhu, as a Khalifa, came to Hudayfa ibn Yaman and said, Ya Hudayfa, I know you are Sahib al-Sir. Can you just tell me one thing? Is my name on this list? A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Umar radiallahu anhu, the Ashra Mubashira Sahabi, the one who has conquered Roman Empire, the one who's conquered Iran, the Persian Empire, who has done everything for Islam from the beginning to the end, for whom the Rasulullah said Islam got strength with the conversion of Umar, is saying, is my name in the list of munafiq? Now, Hudayfa ibn Yaman has a conundrum. Do I tell him or do I not tell him? Because as a Khalifa, you cannot say no, but the Prophet said don't share. But the Prophet also said you have to never disobey the Khalifa. So what do I do now? So he says, I swear to Allah, you are the last person, the first and the last person to whom I'll give the answer to your question. And after this, I will tell nobody else. No, you're not on the list. So, alhamdulillah. Anyway, Hudayfa ibn Yaman, very quickly, his father is Yaman. His father's name was not Yaman. I think it was Husayl or something. They were Yemeni, Hudayfa and his father. They had moved to, his father had married to somebody in Yathrib. Medina was Yathrib before it became Medina, when the moving of the Rasulullah. They had moved to Yathrib, they bought a house there. They were originally part of the Ghatafan. Can you believe this? This Ghatafan that we are having here. They were originally Ghatafanis, but Hudayfa, his father, in his young age, had done something that was illegal or crime activity or something. He got in the wrong friend circle, social circle, let's say, and so he was expelled. And so he moved to Yemen, and then he had Hudayfa. He got married. He moved to Medina, and he moved to Makkah to stay, because Makkah was the place where anybody can come, and nobody was refused because it is the sanctuary of Allah, even in Jahiliyyah. And so he stayed in Makkah, he had a business, then he got married to a girl in Medina, and so he moved to Medina. He had a house in Medina, Yathrib, and in Makkah. When he became a Muslim, and his son, Hudayfa radiallahu anhu, became a Muslim, and they were doing hijrah, remember they made all their money from Makkah. So Abu Jahl stopped him. Abu Jahl said, are you going to Medina? He says, yes, I'm going to my house. Like Yathrib, not Medina. He says, I'm going to my house, that's where I live. He says, you live here, you're not going to go there. He says, no, I'm just going to my house, I have a house there. He says, are you going to go on the side of Muhammad? Because hijrah. He says, okay, give us a qasam. Remember we talked about khiyana? Give us a qasam. Sign the contract. You are not going to take his side. Then we'll let you go. Because he's not a Qurayshi and he's not a Madani. He's actually a Ghatafani coming from Yemen. So they call him Yaman, the man from Yemen. So they sign this treaty. They say, okay, we are not going to attack Makkah. We're not going to attack Makkah. This is important. We're not going to attack Makkah, and we sign this treaty. And they give this qasam and they go to Medina. When they get to Medina, the first year what happens? The Battle of Badr. When the Battle of Badr happens, we have so few sahabis, so few. The Prophet needs every single person to participate. Despite the fact that you need everybody to participate, and we talked about Sa'ad ibn Mu'ad, who offered Medina and the Ansar for the battle. Hudayfa ibn Yaman comes to the Rasulullah and says, Ya Rasulullah, we had signed a pact with Abu Jahl, the worst of the worst, the Fir'aun of our ummah. This is a hadith. This man had the Fir'aun of this ummah, this man. The Prophet said this when they brought his head when he died. The Fir'aun of our ummah has signed a pact that you're not going to take sides with the Rasulullah to attack us. And he said, Ya Rasulullah, this is the pact we had signed, so should we participate or not? And the Prophet said, you have to honor your word with him. Allah will take care of us. This is what I was telling you about khiyana. Banu Qurayza, what they're doing, and wallahi, what's going to happen to Banu Qurayza, we all know. They're going to get the death penalty for khiyana. And every country that, if you do espionage, you get death penalty. Espionage, if you do anything, forget about killing the women and children or trying to kill them. If you don't, I don't know if you know this, but when US and Russia had the Cold War situation, remember the 1965 Cuban Missile Crisis and all of this? They found a professor and his wife selling papers for their business purposes, selling papers to Russia, papers, and they were put to death because they're trading with the enemy. This is United States. And the judge, in his landmark judgment, said, I wish there were a punishment worse than death, because that's what you deserve for what you did. This is United States in our time. And so every civilization, you can't do khiyana. And our religion is no different. Our religion is very important, very specific about this. And people should not mistake khiyana with khid'ah. Yes, you can lie, you can save your life, you can do whatever. Do not do khiyana, remember that. Anyway, coming back to Hudayfa ibn Yaman. So he did not participate in Badr. In Uhud, he did participate. So the question is now, how can he participate against Makkah? So realize, Badr was offensive. Badr was not defensive. Badr was a preeminent point. We have to meet at this point and then we're going to fight, we're going to attack so that they don't come to Medina. Uhud was directly in Medina. So Makkans came to attack the Muslims in Medina. And so for your defense, you can fight, whatever. You understand? This is a defensive war. And Ahzab is again, they've come to Medina and Muslims are digging a trench. It is a defensive war. So Hudayfa ibn Yaman is perfectly within the legal bounds because he promised, signed for not attacking. Okay, so that is the reason why he's able to fight. Okay, by the way, his father Yaman passed away in Uhud. His father passed away in Uhud. It's a very tragic thing because he's probably the only Sahabi we know who was killed by Muslims. And so what happened was Yaman was very old by this time. And in Uhud, Muslims suffered a lot of casualties. Mus'ab ibn Umair passes in Uhud, who looked like the Rasoolullah. In fact, many people thought it's the Rasoolullah who has passed, because he was as handsome as the Rasoolullah. And so what happened was Yaman was in his old age, and the old people, just like in Banu Qurayza, they have been sent to the fortress for the old women and children, old men. They're all sitting in the fortress of Banu Haris. In Uhud, the old people were asked to just, stay in the back and help strategically or whatever, but not come with the battle with a sword. Yaman is sitting there talking to another old person sitting with him, saying, what are we people doing here when everybody's dying there? Because in Uhud, many people are going to die. Many Sahaba are going to pass away. He said, let's just go and fight. If we die now, we die 10 years later, 5 years later, what's the difference? At least we can die for serving Islam. He wanted to be shaheed. So he put up his armor and everything. And of course, the armor covers you completely. And he's walking in now so late into the battle when the Muslims are all scattered and Khalid and al-Waleed is backtracking, going from the other side. The Muslims are confused who is the enemy and who is not. And he's coming in from the wrong direction. And so the Sahaba jump on him. And Hudayfa, from very far, he sees, you can recognize your father even with an armor. He sees his father and he's yelling at the top of his voice, that's my father, don't kill my father. The Sahaba, obviously, they get into the battle and they kill him. As soon as they take off the armor, Hudayfa comes and says, that was my father, you just killed Yaman radiallahu anh. And he passes away as a shaheed, not knowing that he's going to pass away at these hands. Uhud is a really tragic story. And I'm trying to tell you this story to tell you how great this man is and why did the Prophet keep him as the Sahib al-Sir over everybody else. He's crying and he's looking at his father dead, and the Sahaba take off their armor and say, Wallahi, we had no idea. Wallahi, we had no idea. We thought it was, you can imagine, coming from the wrong side. And at this moment, think where we would be at this moment. He quotes a verse of the Quran of Surah Yusuf. When Yusuf a.s. said to his brothers, if you remember, the brothers had done what they had done. And after all these years, when the brothers are like, please forgive us for what we have done. And Yusuf a.s. said, today there is no blame on you. He said this to forgive them. And Hudayfa ibn Yaman says that verse. Today there is no blame on you. And Allah is the Ghafurur Rahim. For him to forgive the Sahaba when he has seen his father, blood oozing out, it must be fresh blood at this time. And for him to forgive. And then the Rasoolullah ordered to pay the diya, accidental manslaughter. 100 camels, that's the price you pay for somebody killed accidentally. And so they paid. And Hudayfa ibn Yaman got the price of 100 camels and he donated all of the 100 camels to the fuqara. He did not keep anything for himself. And after this incident, the respect for Hudayfa radiallahu anh raised so much in the eyes of the Rasulullah. After the Rasulullah had a special love for him. You can imagine what has just happened with him. So that's Hudayfa radiallahu anh. But I wanted to tell you about Ahzab. So Hudayfa is narrating this in his old age. When he's a Sahabi, the Prophet has passed away. And he was sitting and he was talking to the Tabi'i, the next generation. Now, we are 1,444 years later. We are sitting here. And when we talk about the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we are thinking, how would the Prophet look? What would he do? What would he say? We are thinking, visualizing him. Imagine if, in this age, your father would have said, oh yeah, I was with the Rasulullah. I saw him. I remember his hair. I remember touching him. I remember his fragrance. He would have so many questions to ask, right? If we were one generation away, right? And so the Tabi'i are inquisitive, and they really have this love of the Rasulullah that is hard to describe, because they think they would have probably done better. And so one Tabi'i who's really inquisitive and he's really excited, he says, tell me, how did you take care of the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? He says, yeah, we used to do this, we used to do this. And he says, you know, if I were in your place, I would not even let the Rasulullah walk. I would carry him. In other words, you guys didn't do a good job. I would have carried him myself. I would not let him walk. And I'm telling this story to remind myself and all of us. We think we are something, right? We are looking at the stories, we're thinking, why did you not do this? Why did you not do that? Thinking we know better. Astaghfirullah. So this Tabi is thinking, I would have done this for the Rasulullah. And Hudayfa ibn Yaman says, be quiet, my child. For wallahi, I remember a night, and he's going to talk about this night of Ahzab. Be quiet. Like, what do you know? For wallahi, I remember a night of dust storm and sandstorm when the Khandaq was dug, and all of the Sahaba were shivering in cold, fearing for our women and children, fearing for our life, having nothing but to suck on the pit of a date. And the forces had arrived that were never seen before, Ahzab and al-Ghatafani, and our own people had betrayed us, and the Munafiq had left us. Sitting in this cold and hunger, the Rasulullah ﷺ is asking, remember, he does not know what Nuaym is doing. Who is going to go on the side of Abu Sufyaan? The Prophet is asking to all the Sahaba sitting. Who is going to go on the side of Abu Sufyaan to find out what their plan is? Now realize they're all shivering like this. They're just sitting like this. And the Prophet is not saying by name, who's going to go, you're going to go. No, he's just saying who's going to go on the side of Abu Sufyaan. Now realize the dust storms are so bad, now the fire is also extinguishing. So the last remaining heat, you see what's happening with the Russia cutting off the gas in Europe? Well, imagine you have no money, no food, no nothing, and you have been working so hard for a month digging the trench, and now your wife is in trouble, your kids are in trouble. Think all of that put together, and now the Prophet is asking. Already when the Prophet asked, I told this last week, right? Prophet asked, who's going to go and check on Banu Qurayza? I will do it. Zubair al-Daran said it. Who's going to go? Sa'ad and Muaz will do it. Sa'ad and Ubadah is going to go. Ali al-Daran is going to fight. All of this is done. This is all done. Jabir ibn Abdullah sees the Prophet is so hungry, I have to give food to him. All of these stories are done. People are tired. Sahaba are tired. They have no more energy left. They can probably barely have sanity remaining. And they're shivering. And the Prophet said, who is going to go for the second time on the side of Abu Sufyaan to find out what was going on? And nobody speaks. And he's telling this to tell the Tabi'i, oh, I would have not even let him walk, right? And here, no, now the Sahabi is getting up. And now, the reason I'm telling you this is because if I would have just told you this directly, the Prophet asked and nobody said anything, the Prophet asked, nobody said anything, you're thinking, how can the Sahaba not do it? Like, put yourself in your place, and me too. Put yourself in your place and realize where they're sitting. And so for the third time, the Prophet says, who is going to go to Abu Sufyan's camp and tell us what their plan is? And I will be his sahib on the day of Qiyamah, on Akhirah. If you want the Prophet to be your sahib, this is your chance, right? And we are thinking, I would have taken this chance, right? Don't fool yourself. That's what Hudayfa ibn Yaman is telling this Tabi'i. And so nobody spoke for the third time. Now the Prophet says, Ya Hudayfa. And Hudayfa radiallahu anhu is narrating this himself. He said, then the Prophet spoke my name, said my name, and I had no choice. Because now he's saying by name. Up until now, it's a choice. It's not fard. It's sunnah. I mean, who wants to go? I can go. But now, yeah, Hudayfa, now it's fard for him. Like, yes, Ya Rasulullah. He says, Labbaika Ya Rasulullah. Here I am, Ya Rasulullah. And he's not, understand from his explanation of this incident, he's not saying, nobody spoke and then I got up. He didn't say this. He's saying, I had no choice. He's putting himself down. He's not putting extra spices in his story to make himself look like he's something. This shows you why he's Sahib al-Sir. So he's saying, I had no choice and I had to say, yes, Labbaika Ya Rasulullah. I'm here for you, Ya Rasulullah. The Prophet says, go and find out what's happening on Abu Sufyan's camp. Now, why did the Prophet say, Hudayfa, you go? Anybody. Why did the Prophet say to Hudayfa? Why did he not say to any of the... By the way, I didn't tell you, Hudayfa radiallahu anhu was... Remember, he was from Yemen originally. He was a Ghatafani. He had moved from Makkah to Medina. So he had come to the Rasulullah once and he said, Ya Rasulullah, what am I? Am I a Muhajir or an Ansar? Am I the one who has done Hijrah from Makkah, or I'm the one who's from Medina because my mom is from Medina? And the Prophet said, you are both. You're getting both the blessings. So he's the exceptional, rare Sahabi who's both. Remember we talked about Salman al-Farisi 2 weeks ago? Is he Muhajir or Ansar? What is he? What's the answer? Salman al-Farisi. Huh? From Iran. What is he? Salman al-Farisi. Is he Muhajir or Ansar? Salman al-Farisi. He is Ahlul Bayt. Don't you remember? The Prophet said, he is my family. This is the reason why Shia love him. Salman al-Farisi, the Ansar were fighting for him. The Muhajir are fighting for him. He's a Muhajir. No, he's an Ansar. And Ya Rasulullah, you decide what is he. He says, he is Ahlul Bayt. So that's Salman al-Farisi. For Hudayfa ibn Yaman, he's not a Makki, he's not a Madina. No, he's both. He has both the blessings of doing Hijrah and being part of Medina. So why did the Rasulullah choose Hudayfa ibn Yaman to go to Abu Sufyaan's side? But anyway, the reason why he chose him is because he is a neutral person. He is not a Makki or a Madani. He has only lived there. And all the elite of the Quraysh are all dead. Remember in Badr, Abu Jahl is gone, everybody's gone. Abu Sufyaan is the new guy, right? And so the most neutral person they could have picked. If they send anyone from the Muhajir, what's going to happen? I know Ali, I know Umar, everything, right? Of course. And so he was the best face to send. And the Prophet gave him this command. He said, don't let yourself be caught. Don't expose yourself when you go there. You're only going there for a spy mission, not to attack, not to kill. Remember this. It is chilling cold. Remember, nobody woke up, nobody got up. Anyway, I told you this, that Hudayfa ibn Yaman in his old age is telling this to Tabi'i. Now we're coming back to Ahzab. So he gets up. It is already shivering cold. The Prophet Muhammad is wrapping him up. And the Prophet does a dua for Hudayfa ibn Yaman. He does a dua. And this dua, every time I read it, it is so beautiful a dua, because he's going literally in the lion's den, in the worst of times, not knowing what's happening with his women and children. And the Prophet does the dua, Ya Allah, protect Hudayfa from his front, protect Hudayfa from his behind, protect him from his right. Ya Allah, protect Hudayfa from his left, from the top and from below. You cannot have a better dua of protection from every corner, nook and cranny. And Hudayfa ibn Yaman says, it was as if all the fear of my heart had been completely wiped out after this dua. I was walking like I'm invincible. All of that fear, by the way, Hudayfa ibn Yaman has not seen Abu Sufyaan. So he does not know by face who Abu Sufyaan is. He's going to have to guess. He's going there as a completely new person, neutral person. So Hudayfa radiallahu anhu then arrives in the camp of Abu Sufyaan. And you realize, we know this sitting here, Abu Sufyaan on his side, what's he doing? On Abu Sufyaan's side, they have a confusion. Banu Qurayza is flipping, Sabbath, and all of this is going on. Muslims have no idea. So Hudayfa ibn Yaman has arrived, and he's sitting, just like the rest, next to the fire with the rest of the people. And they're just sitting. And then he spots and he sees Abu Sufyaan. He does not know who Abu Sufyaan is, but he says, I realize this must be Abu Sufyaan, because he had his own little extra tent or whatever he would have had, because he is the commander. So just by the looks of it, it could be Khalid ibn al-Waleed, it could be Ikrimah, but this man looks like Abu Sufyaan, who looks like the president. So he guessed. And he says, as Abu Sufyaan was getting on his camel, I had a clear shot to take him out. And then I remembered the words of the Rasoolullah to not expose himself. He says, I had a clear shot to take him if I wanted to, but I remembered the words of the Rasulullah. Don't expose yourself. And so I didn't do anything. I'm just sitting there in the cold, in front of the fire. And Abu Sufyaan then gets up on his camel, makes an announcement. He says, I'm about to say something that is top secret. So check your partner and see if we have any spies. Now you'll see his brains, and you see why the Rasulullah picked him up. Of all the people. So everybody starts checking each other in the dark with the light, checking on him. Yes, Qurayshi and this and that. So Hudayfa ibn Yaman goes to the guy next to him. He says, who are you? Immediately with authority. And the guy goes, oh no, I'm from the Banu this and Banu that. Like, oh, okay. What about you? You look suspicious. And he goes, no, I'm Banu this. Like, all right, then in that case, okay. And then he sits back. Simple psychological overpowering tactic. And so he was able to stay his ground. Abu Sufyaan is convinced everybody is there. Okay, now Abu Sufyaan says, guys, Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl has told me that Banu Qurayza in his mind is flipped, has cheated him. And I think so too. You can see Ghatafani are already leaving because they just need the money, right? Now they're the first people to leave are Ghatafanis. And Banu Qurayza, you can see, has gone back to the side of the Rasulullah in his mind. You can see that they flipped on us. And our horses are getting tired. We don't have food anymore. The wind is blowing like crazy, and the fires are not lit anymore. There's nothing, I don't see any battle happening with this kind of lack of supplies, lack of ammunition. Our camels are tired. So I don't know what you want to do. I don't care what you want to do. I'm done with this treachery. So I'm packing up and I'm leaving. back for Makkah. Abu Sufyaan says this. And so Khalid ibn al-Waleed, the other military commander, he comes to him and says, listen, can you please wait for people to leave instead of you leaving first? You're the captain, you're the commander of the Ahzab. What an impression you will give about Makkah if you leave first. At least wait for the rest of the people to leave. And so Abu Sufyaan says, okay, I guess I'll wait. So instead of riding the camel, he decides to get off the camel, at least for the period when people start leaving. So as he's getting off the camel, Hudayfa looks at him again and says, that was my second chance that I had. I had a clear shot for him. I could have shot him, but again, I remember the words of the Rasoolullah, do not expose yourself. And so I let it slide. I did not shoot him. Now that he knows what the plan is for them to quit. And Ghatafani is quit. And Banu Qurayza has actually flipped. So Nuaym radiallahu anhu was successful in his mission. Hudayfa knows all of it now. Slowly, in the middle of the night, as people are leaving, he too starts leaving. And he slips out back somehow and gets back behind the trench and comes back to the Muslims. Now, while this is going on, the Muslims who have no idea what's going to happen, in the most fearful of times, what do? You pray to Allah. When all the doors are closed, Allah's door is open of rahmah. Pray when you are in distress. Pray when you're in distress. Pray when you're in distress. The Rasoolullah was in prayer in the middle of this cold night, and he was wearing a blanket of one of his wives at the time when Hudayfa radiallahu anh just arrives. Now, while Hudayfa is going from this side of the trench to the other side, an angel, this is a karamat that happens to Hudayfa radiallahu anh. Karamat is basically a miracle that happens to non-prophets. An angel comes up to him and says, go and tell your sahib, we are taking care of the war on his behalf. Allah has sent us to take care of the war. What was the taking care? Allah sent Dabur, the wind, not Dabur, sorry. Dabur is the harsh wind. Sabah, the other wind. You see, there are different types of winds. You see, Japan with all of their might, one little tsunami and everything is over. They had to shut down the nuclear plants and everything. Allah can destroy a civilization with water if Allah decides to destroy. Wind can destroy everything if Allah wants. Allah has just made sure that the wind speed is just controlled so that we don't die. The moment we hit arrogance, or the zina is over everywhere, or riba is everywhere, or something, you never know when something is coming, right? And so it is said that Ibn Hajar says the Sabah is the wind that was sent, that carried the send of Yusuf alayhi salam to Yaqub alayhi salam. That is Sabah, the wind of Sabah. But anyway, so Allah sent the wind of Sabah to Abu Sufyaan, which destroyed all the fires. The horses are uneasy, the camels are giving up, and the dust and sand and everywhere. Have you seen the dust storm in Saudi or Dubai or something? Have you seen how sticky it gets and how you can't even see your own hands? It is the worst thing. It is the worst thing. They showed the sandstorms taking over the entire city. There's nothing. You can't drive. You can't see anything. It's like a fog in front of you. It sticks to your body and everything. It's the worst. It's into your nose and everything. Imagine sand in your mouth. And so Allah sent that. Angels are responsible for moving all the winds. So the angel comes and says, go and tell your sahib. By the way, this proves that he's the sahib of the Rasulullah. He's calling him your sahib. He doesn't say go and tell the Rasulullah. He says, go and tell your sahib. So Hudayfa is the sahib of the Rasulullah. Go and tell your sahib, we have taken care of the war on his behalf. He comes over, the Rasulullah is praying. Well, guess what the Rasulullah was praying when he was doing this spy mission? The Prophet was praying, Ya Allah, the one who has sent the book down, the one who has sent the clouds and the winds, Ya Allah, destroy this Ahzab and help us against them. So this angel came to tell Hudayfa ibn Yaman, go and tell him we are helping against them. Your sahib doesn't have to fight anymore. So when he arrives back, he's shivering like you can imagine the walk with no food and everything. He's shivering with hypothermia. And the Rasulullah was in the prayer. So in one riwayah it says the Rasulullah motioned him to come into his blanket in the middle of prayer. I can't imagine a more beautiful place to sit than the arm of the Rasulullah while he's in prayer, when he has done the greatest spy mission that no Sahabi wanted to do. What an honor, what a badge. In the other riwayah it says the Prophet himself walked, put the blanket on him, and then continued his prayer. In any case, he is now sitting in the warmth of the Rasulullah. And the Prophet Muhammad, when he finishes his salah, then he tells everything what happened. And the Prophet also told the Sahaba, don't wish for a war. This is the moment when he said that. Don't wish for a war. But if war is upon you, when war comes upon you, realize that Jannah is under the shade of the sword. So this wind was sent. Quraysh had to return back. He told the Rasoolullah, Ya Rasoolullah, they're all packing up and leaving. Abu Sufyaan is packing up. Khalid ibn Waleed. By the way, I didn't tell you this. Khalid ibn Waleed, when he sees everybody's leaving now, Ghatafani is leaving, Banu Qurayza is flipped, he says this in front of Ikrimah, the other military commander, the son of Abu Jahl, and Abu Sufyaan. Khalid ibn Waleed will eventually become Muslim. Remember, he's one of the last. He is the last Sahabi in the last batch who did Hijrah. Just before the Prophet is about to conquer Makkah now, he was the last Sahabi who went to Medina. So he is a Muhajir. He got that honor, that blessing. Khalid ibn Waleed. Khalid ibn Waleed says, this is a miracle. This is getting abundantly clear that this man is on the right path. So Abu Sufyaan and Ikrimah look at him like, what are you saying? He says, come on, man, 10,000 of us and we cannot even enter his city. We cannot even enter, forget about defeating. This has got to be some kind of a miracle. He says, you've lost your mind. Stop talking about this. But this is the beginnings of iman for Khalid ibn Waleed. And so realize what has happened in Ahzab. Look at the iman of the Sahaba. So Ahzab was not necessarily a test of your strength. It was a test of your iman. You see, when your wife and children is in danger, when 10,000 are surrounding you, when you have no food remaining, who does what good? Jabir ibn Abdullah could not see the rocks tied to the Rasulullah's stomach, and so he cut the small little lamb that he had that nobody want to sacrifice, because you want it to grow up, you want it to have milk so many years, and then you cut the lamb. But he decided to sacrifice for the sake of the Rasulullah, and then everyone in Khandaq was able to eat that lamb with the barakah. And so the iman of the Sahaba is what was tested here. Amr ibn Abdul Wud, the strongest person on the opposition, was slashed by Ali radiallahu anh, thanks to the rahmah of Allah. Zubayr radiallahu anh slashed the person in half. The bravery of his mother, Safiya radiallahu anha, sitting alone in the fortress of Banu Haris. And these two Jewish people come up and she slices the neck and plops it on the other person. And that is how they think, oh my God, they must have had male reinforcements. Otherwise, there's no way somebody's going to kill. And so look at everybody contributing together. Salman al-Farisi had one suggestion. Ya Rasulullah, in our place, we dig a Khandaq. We dig a trench. And that trench kept them at bay the entire time. The hard work of Ammar ibn Yasir, taking 2 bricks instead of 1. The ignorance of the Quraysh about the customs of the Jews, not knowing what is Sabbath, not realizing they were completely on their side if they would have believed them. The conversion of Nuaym ibn Masood al-Ghatafani, if he would not have flipped and done all of this, nothing would have happened. The neutrality of Hudayfa ibn Yaman, the one person who was not recognized by Ghatafan, or because he had been kicked out of Ghatafan, but he knows his people. And he lived in Makkah, but all those people are dead, the ones that he knew. And so his neutrality. And the separation of the munafiq from the mu'min. The belief in the words of the Rasulullah when the Prophet said, I can see Rome, I can see Allah is gifting us Persia, and I can see Allah is gifting us Yemen. And these munafiq were like, oh, he's saying all of this because we're all going to die now. So it's easy to say, I can see this and I can see that. And they left. So Allah separated dirt from the pure iman, from the mu'min. And Ahzab is a lesson in all of that. That we are tested by our iman. Allah is going to purify the evil. You don't need to have the strongest. Remember Hassan bin Thabit, we talked about him as a poet. He used to shake when he used to see a sword. But he contributed as a poet. All of us have our own specializations. We have to contribute in the way we can. Not everybody can be Hudayfa. And not everybody can be Khalid ibn Waleed. We all have to find our strengths and capitalize on that. Okay, next week inshallah we'll talk about what happens now to Sa'ad ibn Mu'adh. Remember, he has been hit by an arrow. He is going to pass away. But now, just as soon as the Prophet ﷺ is about to arrive back home, when all of this has happened, as soon as they arrive, Jibreel ﷺ comes down and says, are you hanging up your armor? And remember, this is Asr time. Asr has just begun. Are you hanging up your armor? The Prophet says, yes. He says, if the ins have hung up their armor, realize the angels have not yet hung up their armor. Allah has commanded you right now to go to Banu Qurayza and deal with them. And so now the Prophet sends out a notice to everyone. Under the banner of Ali, under the leadership of Ali radiallahu anh, head to Banu Qurayza. But it was Asr time, and so the Sahaba say, Ya Rasulullah, it's Asr time. Let's finish the prayer and then we'll go. And the Prophet said, do not pray Asr until you get to Banu Qurayza. And so next week we'll talk about what happens at Banu Qurayza. It's a whole other chapter. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.